Thank you very much for coming here today. I'm just wondering when I guess you arrived in yesterday, and appreciate you coming to give us some of these answers. I'm wondering when you got the report.
You know, I did arrive yesterday, and I was actually standing in the line at Customs reading the report on my BlackBerry. So
okay.
that's when I first got it.
So you got it about the same time we got it, but you obviously knew that it was important to be here.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, once again, as I mentioned earlier, I've done this a few times, and I think it's always very important to make sure that you make a in-person presentation. Obviously, this is an important market to us, not just Canada, but British Columbia, and this is very serious for us. So, of course, we wanted to be here to make a presentation today.
So, what kind of profits do you make worldwide?
You know, we're a private company. We don't disclose our profits worldwide, but you know, the company is certainly a successful company, and we are profitable.
So you're assuming you're going to make a good profit in Vancouver and in British Columbia?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, we're a for-profit business. We want to make money, and obviously we wouldn't be coming to a place where we thought we'd have an unsuccessful event. We certainly feel that an event here will absolutely be successful.
And have you been, obviously you're making, from what I understand, many millions of dollars on this. So I'm wondering whether you have met with the provincial counterparts to discuss some provincial regulations for this.
Well, we've certainly met with provinces other than British Columbia. We've obviously done two very successful events in Quebec. We've certainly met with representatives of many of the other provincial athletic commissions. We also have met with Attorney General De Jong, with him probably about 90 days ago, to discuss some of the issues that have been discussed here today regarding the criminal code and other things. And so we have met with members of the provincial government. We are frankly an advocate for provincial regulation. I think it makes sense, and it's good, and it's worked in other provinces. But at the end of the day, each province decides what they want to do, and I think the City of Vancouver is certainly well equipped to regulate an event like ours or others that occur within the City of Vancouver.
But you've obviously been deeply involved with regulation in the United States in particular. And I'm wondering why you've not been pushing for stricter regulations, and whether you think the proposals that are before us today are strict enough, the guidelines strict enough, and if they give the city enough indemnity if something did happen before the provincial regulations.
Well, first of all, I think the proposals that have been made here today are great, and I think they are in a sense, you know, what we're asking for. I think we're a strong advocate for regulation. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we won't do an event in any state that doesn't have regulation. And I'll give you a classic example. We just recently received regulation in the state of Massachusetts. Over the last 7 years, we could have done events where we could have made millions of dollars. And we decided as a company that, you know, even though we could have done it, it wasn't illegal, it just wasn't regulated. We felt like, you know, it doesn't make sense to go to any jurisdiction that doesn't properly regulate the sport. So we're very proactive when it comes to seeking regulation. And I do think the proposal that's been laid out here absolutely meets our criteria. But, you know, once again, we're constantly looking to make things better and safer, and this may be appropriate now. 2 years from now, when maybe you take a look at this again, there might be additional changes that need to be made. So
you feel that you would completely support this report because you could make the sufficient profit that meets your expectations?
Well, I mean, you know, once again, it's not just about money. I mean, certainly we do want to make money, and we want to continue to, you know, put bread on the table for the 275 fighters that work with us, to our 150 employees around the world that work for us. We absolutely do. But, you know, frankly, we've taken a look at this sport in a much larger sense and said, absolutely, we want to be profitable. We want to do what's in the best long-term interest of the sport of mixed martial arts. And it gets back to what we're talking about here today. Regulation is key to the success of our business, but more importantly, it's important to the success of the sport of mixed martial arts. The analogy I heard earlier comparing snowboarding and skiing is apropos. I mean, it really is absolutely what we're dealing with in the world of mixed martial arts. And once again, regulation, the Olympics, for example, in snowboarding, I mean, that was a quantum leap for the sport of snowboarding. We believe regulation is what will sustain this sport long term.
I agree, and I think, but obviously I think we need provincial regulations. I think Council's been clear previously, and I think it still is there. And we still have the criminal code that's laying down guidelines that this doesn't fit within. So obviously those are concerns that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodsworth. Councillor Reimer.
Hi, sorry.
a few questions. I hear you on the regulation part and that being key, but I have to believe that you've read our criminal code because or maybe not the whole thing, but at least the section pertaining to prize fighting, because it obviously would impact on you haven't had a serious injury yet, but if you did, the criminal code would come into play, I imagine. So I wouldn't mind your opinion on how gray an area you think it is.
Well, I used to be a practicing lawyer in the United States. I was never a practicing lawyer in Canada, so I hate to opine on Canadian law. But you're absolutely right. I have spent some time reading not the entire criminal code, but certainly the portions that are relevant to us. And I've certainly spent some time reviewing the proposal of C-31, the bill C-31, which may change this. I think the reality, at least in my interpretation, is that the current criminal code would permit the provinces or cities to regulate the sport of mixed martial arts, and I think that's been the practice in almost every province, even in the province of Ontario. Ontario is not regulated mixed martial arts, but they have regulated kickboxing, and kickboxing is not part of the definition of prize fights or what's exempted from prize fights in the current criminal code. So I think the reality is that, as was mentioned before, that this is an old law, that the provinces and the cities have taken a look at it and interpreted it in light of where we are today. And once again, it gets back to what we were talking about before, which is the key to regulation is making sure things are properly done in a safe manner. And I think that's why it's so important that we have regulation. I think these commissions, whether it's Quebec or whether it's in Alberta or whatever province, have looked at it and said, listen, we're fulfilling the mandate. The mandate is to make sure the sport's safe. And as long as we're doing that, we don't feel like we're violating a law that may come from, frankly, a different generation. But once again, not a Canadian lawyer, so I wouldn't rely on that.
Our own Canadian lawyers often don't give me straight opinions on things, so that's fine. Last question was around... well, I mean, you can only represent your own organization, but my strong sense is that there's a spectrum of both capacity and, well, I hesitate to say professionalism, but capacity in the promoters out there. So we're not opening the door just for you. We're opening the door for everyone. So you must have some industry background to give some sense of could Rage in the Cage or Art of War, are they capable of meeting the same standards that you are in terms of insurance and indemnity?
I think they are, and I think they should be. I think that's one of the benefits of regulation. You can set a standard. You can set a standard that makes sense for the City of Vancouver or the province of British Columbia, et cetera. And I think if they're not able to live up to the standards that you set, then they shouldn't be doing events here. And I think that's one thing that I think, hopefully, the good of this is that you set a standard, and the reality what we've seen around the world is that once you set a standard, people start rising up to that standard. And I think that's, once again, one of the benefits of regulation, setting a standard, and if you can't meet it, then you shouldn't be doing events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. Mr. Epstein, I have a couple of questions in regards to your entity. If I heard you correctly, you have previously provided indemnification to the dollar value amount of $12 million. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say that we pinned a specific dollar amount on it. We have insurance that would typically provide, in situations where there was a city-owned arena, we'd provide essentially riders or certificates of insurance that would cover cities, states, counties, et cetera, underneath the umbrella of our insurance. So
we have indemnities. You would add the city as an additional insured?
Absolutely.
And so what would that dollar value have been in those instances?
It would have been $12 million. That's the current level of our insurance coverage for events.
What's the insurer's rating under AM Best?
All top rated insurance. Yeah, there's not a lot of cities that will allow you to provide insurance from anything but top rated by AM Best.
But is it A++, A minus?
Not an expert when it comes to insurance. I can get you that information at a later date, but my understanding is that cities have always asked us to have the highest rated insurance companies.
So you would not have a problem with a double A++?
I don't think so. I can tell you that this is probably not the right name to throw out, but I know AIG has been our insurer for a long time, but I guess probably not the best example. I know there are other top rated companies that we've used other than AIG over the years. So.
would you have any issue with us seeing your commercial general liability policy?
Not at all.
And the waiver that you have your contestants sign, I'm assuming that you do have a waiver, adding some clause in there that would defend the city and hold it harmless as well?
Absolutely, and frankly, that's something that many states have as part of a commission-based requirement that everybody sign what's called either a provincial or state-based out agreement that would release the city, the state, et cetera, from certain things. So there should not be a problem with us doing that. That's standard operating procedure.